It's a great honor to introduce today's speaker. He's a Christian, husband, father, veteran, and a former candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Along with his wife, Jessica, they're raising 4 children to be focused on God and service to others. After witnessing the September 11th attacks on our country, he joined the military at the age of 17. He was deployed to Iraq with B Battery 5th Battalion, 113th Field Artillery. There he completed over 100 missions as a turret gunner. And since the military, he has continued to serve his community as a police officer in Nags Head and Raleigh. And he's one of the record-setting number of veterans who ran for public office this year. He was a candidate for Congress, U.S. Congress. We need more veterans in government because they embody the ideals this country was founded on. It is my pleasure to present to you such a God-fearing servant of the people, Mr. Alan Chester.
I'm a little bit taller than the mayor, so bear with me. I figured out one thing. If I were to write an essay, I would not score in the top 3 in this area. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you. One more hand for these guys. And again, I want to thank your community and the veterans that show up. Again, if all the veterans in the crowd just stand up for me, please. Some of these guys came before me and set the path for me. I hope that I contributed in some way while I was in. And some of these people writing these essays, I saw an Afghanistan vet back there that's younger than me. There's a guy still in uniform. You guys, man, keep pounding, keep fighting, keep us on track, guys. We love you guys. I want to thank Mayor Turner for inviting me to come back. He met me in May, and apparently I fooled him enough that he asked me to come back and speak. I'd really like to thank you guys because you guys had the choice of whether to show up today or not. And you guys chose to, so thank you. That same choice was presented to my 9-year-old son this morning, and he said, "Where are you going, Daddy?" I said, "Well, I've got to go to Butner, and there's an event down there." And he said, "Who's speaking?" I said, "I am. You want to go?" I said, "No, I'll stay home with Mom." So thank you guys, because you guys decided to come out today. I'd like to thank the band. Taps was awesome. Thank you. Your guys' Veterans Holiday Committee, I want to thank them. You guys do an awesome job honoring us veterans. I spoke to a lady earlier. I think I lost her. Where'd she go? No, you guys don't want to stand, be recognized, please, because you guys put a lot of work into this. The Veterans Holiday Committee, man, you guys do awesome. Thank you. And then, like good Baptists, when I get up, everybody's looking at their watch, trying to figure out when we're going to get out of here so we can get some lunch, right? I promise not to keep you guys that long. I'm not known for long speeches. But we do find ourselves here again today, the 100th anniversary of the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918. The armistice was signed to end the war, and I said, if I wrote this essay, I would not score in the top 3. These guys killed me. But I want to address an issue of why we still celebrate Veterans Day now. Politically, we have a very divided climate. Our nation seems to be divided, but there's still hope. This is one of the examples of hope we still have in our nation. We all still come together to celebrate Veterans Day. But why? What are we celebrating on Veterans Day? I'm glad you asked. Veterans Day is set aside to honor those chosen few who have elected to leave behind their comforts, their selfish ideals. We celebrate those who leave their homes, their families, and generally speaking, their sense of safety and security. all to protect and defend an ideal that we hold so sacred and is larger than any single individual. You see, this is where every veteran's story begins, is with a great calling, a great purpose. This calling can be tracked to the very founding of our nation. In the Declaration of Independence, we all know the major principles in that document. It's a document where we declare some self-evident truths, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, we as Americans take that for granted, and we rarely read this document to the end. You see, while this document is great, that calling is found in the very last sentence. In the Declaration of Independence, the founders framed it like this. They said, because of these ideals, pointing back to the rest of the document, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's how the document ends. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. In the Bible, Jesus paraphrases this calling. In John 15:13, very familiar, greater love had no man than to lay down his own life for his friends. You see, the founders, they weren't soldiers, not all of them. Most of them were lawyers, farmers, doctors, business owners, but they understood there was a cost. Jesus was not a soldier, but he, more than most, understood that freedom had a cost. They all understood there was a cost of liberty and freedom, and that it comes with a price, and that price is the blood of free men. For the freedom from the bondage of sin, that was Jesus freely choosing to spill his own blood for us. But for the freedom from tyranny, that cost is the blood of volunteer soldiers. So you can't be coerced into fighting for freedom. You have to choose. And this is where we find our cause for celebration, the answer of the call. Now it's true that not all that fight, or not all that answer the call will fight, and not all that answer the call will die. Not all that answer the call will even be deployed to defend their nation. But all who answer the call know the cost. All who answer the call know what they could be asked to sacrifice, what could be asked of them by answering the call. And they choose to go anyway. The burden of ensuring liberty falls on us all. But it's the veteran who steps up to answer that call, so that we may live our lives without the personal sacrifice that is required to ensure freedom. We all know this collectively. As a nation, we come together and love on our veterans because subconsciously we know this to be true. We know that an individual has stepped up to pay a price that is required of us all on our behalf. And we know that our nation loves veterans because we all just endured an election, right? Amen? Amen. We all just went through an election. It would be political suicide for a politician to come out and be anti-veteran, just out in the open, because America loves the veterans. But we would be lying to ourselves if we said that we got it right all the time. I would be doing you and veterans everywhere a disservice. A great disservice I feel I would be abusing my position if I failed to admit that there's a great crisis amongst veterans in our nation. As Mayor Turner stated in my introduction, I am a combat veteran. On September 11, 2001, I left behind everything I knew, everything I felt was safe, and completely dedicated to myself as a role in the military. Oh, no, I skipped a page, excuse me. I had to write this down because there's no way I get through it without writing it down, guys. But I completely dedicated myself for a life in the military, something greater than me. For the first time in my life, I had a purpose. February 24, 2003, I answered that call. Enlisting in the military, I had to convince my mother to sign off, which wasn't easy, because I was still 17 years old and the Army wouldn't take me on my own signature. But I felt it was my calling and it was my purpose, so I convinced her to sign. In the summer of 2005, my unit was mobilized and we were told that we were going to be deploying. By November, we were running combat missions in Iraq. I was actually living my purpose, I felt, for the first time in my life. For 11 months, I lived my purpose with great efficiency. You see, my life, but more importantly, the life of my teammates, my members, the other guys who were running missions with me, depended on me being able to perform. Depended on me being able to do my job. See, I was the lead gunner for a recovery/QRF team that covered the whole northern half of Iraq, everything north of Baghdad. And this was in 2005, 2006, which only the people in the initial push think that that's the second most dangerous time to be there. They all think that the initial push was more dangerous. But I was the tip of the spear in my mind. With no less than 11 other lives behind me, depending on me being able to do my job, I did it, and I did it well. I studied local maps to learn the layout of roads we hadn't been on yet, to make sure that if we got caught in that area, I knew the layout and I could do my job proficiently. I practiced with my weapon systems training until I could diagnose and correct malfunctions in the dark with one hand. I wanted to become a professional at fulfilling my purpose. And I wasn't alone. The others on my team were doing the same thing. All of them perfecting their craft to the point that they were the best in the world at what they did. We all found great peace in the purpose that we had been given in the United States Army. But then the war was over. At least it was for me. I completed my deployment, I came home, I left the military, and my journey into civilian life began. And honestly, I struggled. I had never spoken publicly of this, ever. But I battled depression. There were times I absolutely hated myself. You might ask, how? I came back, I got a great job, I became a police officer. I have a beautiful wife, I have kids. You'd be right, she's beautiful, I have great kids. I have a wonderful family who loves me. The number one thing everybody says when I tell them this privately, like I said, I've never told this publicly before, but I always get the, oh, you got the PTSD, didn't you? Yeah, I did. The events in Iraq left me with a clinical diagnosis of PTSD. But that wasn't what I was fighting. See, I was fighting something significantly more dangerous than PTSD. I was fighting to find my lost purpose. You see, I had devoted myself so completely to my role in the military that it became my identity. I wasn't Alan Chesser anymore. I was 3-1 Golf, lead gunner for Bravo Battle Axe 3rd Platoon, the bad guy. That was my nickname while we were over there. That was a fun little nickname. When I left the military, I couldn't bring that with me. It didn't translate to civilian society. There was no place for my identity. There was no place for me because I didn't feel there was a place for my purpose, something that I had dedicated myself to so completely. You see, we as humans are never more self-destructive than when we lack purpose. What I found in my personal struggle to reintegrate was that veterans always blame themselves for this failure to conform. We know this, and we know that the military blames the veterans for it as well, because the veterans are the only ones required to go through mandatory reintegration training. General public, not veteran, who's ever had to go through a training seminar to figure out how to reintegrate with a veteran? But how many veterans who have been deployed have gone through mandatory reintegration training? Show of hands. But since no one wants to admit that we blame the veteran publicly, we do it passively by blaming conditions as surrogates. Oh, it's not his fault. The war changed him. Oh, it's not his fault. He has PTSD. He can't help it. Imagine, if you could, going from being the best in the world at what you do to suddenly being told you're broken simply because you changed jobs. No other profession in the world has to deal with this. We've never heard anyone say, oh, you're a surgeon? That's okay, you were just following orders. You see, it's this isolation, the inability to assimilate, and the lack of purpose that allows PTSD to manifest in such destructive ways. We heard a lot about PTSD in the speeches. It comes up a lot, and the general public doesn't know how to process it. And veterans don't in conjunction with a lack of purpose. Statistically, the veteran community is hit harder than any other demographic for suicide rate, which currently sits at 22 a day, and the opioid or chemical dependency, whether it's opioids or alcohol. This mirrors the higher rate of occurrence in lower income, higher unemployment communities. I experienced this firsthand as a police officer in Southeast Raleigh, where I worked in housing projects and low-income communities. A lack of purpose will have higher crime rates, higher drug use, and ultimately will self-destruct. So where do we go from here? Because that's all kind of depressing, right? I know you guys came here to get a little hoorah speech, and I just busted your balloon, as you said earlier. But praise God, that's not the end of the story, guys. You see, the good news for veterans is you still have a purpose. Your oath, your training, your dedication, your ability to stand in the gap on behalf of people you've never even met is still needed in this country. You are still needed. You are still essential. The only difference is in the Army, I never had to worry about my purpose. There was always an NCO that outranked me, that was more than willing to provide me with purpose, motivation, and direction whenever they felt like I needed it. Even when they felt, or even when I felt I didn't need it. They were always right there to make sure I knew exactly what I was supposed to be doing and how I should be doing it. And probably a better way to do it. In the civilian society, we have to discover our purpose for ourselves. We have to provide for ourselves a majority of the motive or motivation and direction as well. See, I found that I always tried harder in the military when I knew other people were depending on me. So I began to help other veterans, brothers and sisters who couldn't help themselves. Any need I could find, whether it was mowing grass for a Vietnam Special Forces veteran's widow, helping an admin clerk file a VA claim, or just helping a Gold Star family from my community learn how to fold a flag. I wanted to help all of them. And that, and the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ, restored my sense of purpose and probably saved my life. Now, I still struggle from time to time, but I love my life. I love my family, and I love my purpose. So I want to challenge every veteran here, every veteran who can hear this message. Find your purpose again. It's out there. All you have to do is find it. If you feel like you don't have a purpose, or you may never find your purpose, then make finding your purpose. Reach out to other veterans who you believe have found their purpose. Have conversations with them. Find out what they did. Find out how they held on until they found their purpose. And when you finally find your purpose, reach out to those brothers and sisters you know are still struggling to find theirs. Lift each other up. Build each other up. Protect one another like we did in the military. And for civilians who are attempting to figure out how do we help veterans, on this Veterans Day, we all go around and say thank you for your service. Dan Crenshaw from Texas was just elected into the House of Representatives. Lieutenant Commander from Navy SEALs, I'll say Special Forces team, right, for context here. He came up with a beautiful way to express to civilians what it's like, what we feel like on Veterans Day. And he encouraged you guys, and I'm going to encourage you guys to do what he said as well. Don't just thank a veteran for their service. Tell them never forget. Because thank you for your service implies that we're separate. That I served you, or that we're separate somehow. That there's a hierarchy there. Never forget reminds us that we're all in this together. That's why the motto after 9/11 was never forget. It's a bonding. It brings us all to the same level. I encourage you all, continue to fight, continue to hunt for your purpose. I want to thank you guys for having me out today. I told you I wasn't going to take a lot of time. I'm wrapping this thing up. Thank you for allowing me to come here. Thank you for choosing to come and hear me speak. Unlike my son. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story. Thank you for allowing me to fulfill my purpose. God bless you guys. Have a great Veterans Day. Never forget.